What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Windy City Gridiron Radio of Windy City Gridiron of SB Nation, your best source for everything Chicago Bears. This is Robert Bukowski, your host as always. Tonight I am joined by what I think is becoming my regular co-host, Andrew Link. Andrew, what's up, man?
What's happening, Robert?
A restful day, got a lot of sleep, napped a lot. Probably napped a little too much, but I enjoyed myself. I know you didn't have I know you wanted to work out in the dark today, apparently. You wanted to lift like an idiot in the dark.
Yeah,
you're running in Teams right now.
Lost power at 2 a.m. It somehow woke me up, and I was in the gym after it went off in the gym portion of my apartment complex. So yeah, it's been a long day. It's been a rough day, but yeah, I'm here. I'm alive and kicking, and it's Packers week, so let's get it on.
Thanks for your sacrifice, dude. Really, really appreciate it.
That's what I'm here for.
And we're pleased to be joined by Peter Bukowski of Acme Packing Company and FanRag Sports, and he also hosts Locked on Packers, lots of great daily podcasts about the Packers. Peter, what's up, man?
As great as a Packers podcast can be to a Bears fan, right?
Yeah, I've listened to it before. I like it. I'm being honest.
I appreciate that. No, I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump right into things. So for narrative, for drama purposes, the Packers can tie the all-time season series with the Bears for the first time since 1933. They're a bit banged up, though. They're 2-1, but they're kind of more or less trying to survive through the first 3 weeks of the season. Aaron Rodgers is getting killed by like an absolutely atrocious turnstile of an offensive line. Injuries have kind of ravaged that unit. The run defense is being gashed consistently. It kind of feels like we have this discussion every year where the Packers seem vulnerable and then Rodgers just goes crazy, carries them through the regular season. Is the concern level the same as it's been in the past?
I think Packer Nation is a little spoiled, if I'm being honest. And I think they have a short memory because they remember how the season ended. They remember the disappointment in the NFC title game, and obviously that was disappointing. But given the teams that they have had on the field, I mean, they were as impressive as you could ask for in week one against a team in Seattle that I think everyone agrees is flawed, but still the Seahawks, right?
Definitely.
And in week two, you go in with a first ever start for your right tackle, first ever left tackle start for Kyle Murphy, who had never started at left tackle, and it was only his second start ever. And you're asking him to go up against Vic Beasley and the Atlanta Falcons. Also, Mike Daniel's not in that game. Randall Cobb gets hurt in that game. Nick Perry, not 100%. No. The list goes on and on. We don't have enough time to go through their injury report because by the time we did, we wouldn't have time for anything else. That's not the case this week. I think the team that you're going to see in November is very different from the team that you're seeing right now. So for me personally, the concern level is not particularly high. I think when they're healthy, they're one of the two best teams in football. All right, one of the two best teams in the NFC, excuse me. And we just haven't seen that team yet. Now, whether or not we're ever going to see that team this season is certainly an open question. They are the Pack IRs for a reason.
That's pretty good.
I mean, that's pretty succinct. Yeah, you puts into perspective.
Maybe Bears Nation is not as familiar with that.
With
that meme, but basically the Packers' injuries is this. I mean, remember they won the Super Bowl in a season where like a similar thing happened where it just like every key guy at some point was hurt, including Aaron Rodgers. And they won the Super Bowl anyway. So I'm not saying that that's a harbinger of things to come here, but the injury report has been a lot better in the last few days. David Bakhtiari and Brian Bulaga are practicing. Randall Cobb is practicing. Nick Perry is practicing. Jake Ryan is practicing. So if those guys play on Thursday, I mean, that's a huge lift. That's not great analysis, but it's true.
Yeah, but to be fair, for most Bears fans, we're not exactly used to starting off the season in a similar fashion where everything's inconsistent and then turning it on like a buzzsaw in the second half. So Everything's new to us. We don't have that consistency level yet, Peter. We don't have that consistency yet. So,
look, very few teams do. I mean, there's a reason why they're going to, or they're in position at least this year to set a record for most consecutive playoff appearances, and the only other team in recent time that has been able to do that is the Patriots, who are also in position to tie that record this year. So the consistency with which the Packers have performed, despite the fact that they've had these injuries, it's pretty remarkable. And I think it's a testament to Ted Thompson. I think it's a testament to Mike McCarthy and obviously Aaron Rodgers, who, frankly, he gets too much credit for the team's win and not enough blame for when the team loses. I think that's probably true of most quarterbacks, but the offense has not looked great through 3 weeks, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that Rodgers is not quite in sync with his offense at this point.
I think Andrew has a point on that. Andrew?
Yeah, so I just wanted to bring up somebody who actually is healthy for a minute here. So Ty Montgomery was somebody who I think a lot of people in NFL circles kind of saw as a breakout player going into this season.
Sure.
Despite the fact that 37% of his rush yards have come against the Bears in the last 2+ seasons. So I just kind of wanted to, get your thoughts on it, and, how do you see his transition going from, running back to kind of running back, kind of wide receiver to full-time, more or less running back. And, it looks like he's struggling a little bit to start the season. I mean, currently right now, I believe his yards per carry is, what is it?
3 yards per carry, yeah.
Per carry. I mean, for his career, he's at 4.9. So, obviously he's struggling a little bit, and a lot of that could be blamed on the offensive line. But just kind of want to get your thoughts on what does the running game look like going forward here for the Packers?
I think Ty Montgomery is going to be fine. I think a lot of the issues so far have been offensive line driven. Remember, in week 1, they played a really good defense. And in week 2, they got behind early and were never able to establish Ty Montgomery in any sort of form or fashion. But then when they needed to get drives, they split Montgomery out. They got him matched up against linebackers and safeties, and they went to town. And that was successful against the Bengals to a lesser degree, but certainly against the Falcons. The Bengals did a really great job of rallying to the ball. They were getting Montgomery the ball with space, and the Bengals successfully closed down that space time and again. And I think that's how teams are going to have to defend Montgomery. But in terms of him being a runner, we just haven't had an opportunity to see him in this offense with a healthy offensive line in a position for him to succeed. He's a running back. He's 6 flat, 225. I thought coming out of Stanford, he was a running back. I watched him catch the ball or not catch the ball, as was often the case, and looked at his body and just went, he's a running back. When he has the ball in his hands, that is when he's at his best. He bounces off tackles. He breaks tackles. He runs through tackles. It takes 3 or 4 guys on a given play to get him to the ground. And the fact that they can split him out wide and they can put him in the slot and he can do different things in the passing game makes him so valuable. I think through 2 weeks, he might have been the number 1 fantasy running back in football through 2 weeks because he had 3 touchdowns. He got so many touches, so many catches. He's playing. He does have the most snaps of any running back in football. So this idea that Jamal Williams or Aaron Jones were going to take touches away from him was never a thing that I bought into. If you drafted Jamal Williams in the 8th or 9th round of your fantasy draft, I'm so sorry for you. You should have listened to me. I told you not to do that. Ty Montgomery is the running back for this team. He's going to continue to get carries, but I think the ideal situation for him is 15 carries. It's not 25. And he hasn't gotten to that like 25, 22, 21 carry threshold this year. I think they want to get him 15, 16 carries, get him 4 or 5 touches. If he can get to 20 total touches, I think Green Bay wins most of those games.
What would you characterize his ceiling as? Because not a lot. Another prominent football writer, Justice Mosqueda, said that he would probably take Ty Montgomery over Le'Veon Bell.
Well, you have to understand this about Justice. Justice does not think Le'Veon Bell is a top
that's true.
tier running back. So you have to frame it in that context. Do I think Ty Montgomery can be one of the elite running backs in the league? Yes, I do. And part of the reason is because he has the kind of versatility that we gush about with David Johnson and Le'Veon Bell. Because you can split him out wide, you can do different things with him. That makes him more valuable to a given offense. So I think when this offense is healthy, when the offensive line in particular is healthy, you're going to see Montgomery have some 100-yard games. You're going to see him break off some big runs because when he gets in the secondary, he's tough to tackle. That dude is a load. He is, I mean, if you've watched any Packer games this season or any Packer game in which Ty Montgomery has been in, he is a rocked up dude. So if you're a corner and you're, 5'10", 185, and you need to take down 225, bowling ball of butcher knives, Ty Montgomery, you might struggle. And so I think he has the ability. I mean, last year, you guys saw it at the end of the season when what did he hang? 180 plus on the Bears in that game or something?
It might have been 200, actually. It might have been 200 plus. I'm not
in total yards.
I think total yards was over 200, but I think rushing it was like 181 or something.
162 like rushing and 57.
Okay,
57 kick returns. Let's see. He only had one catch for two catches for 1 yard, so he didn't really do anything with the pass game.
What a bum, yeah.
But I think, when he has the opportunity to be a part of an offense that is healthier, that has offensive linemen that are actual NFL caliber, you're going to see him break off chunk plays like he did against Chicago. And you're going to see him turn 4 yards into 8. And you're going to see him turn 6 yards into 12 and 15 and 20 because of his quickness, his explosiveness, and his vision with the ball. I think that was a really underrated part of why he was such a good kick returner at Stanford, is he has really good vision. And last year he was just sort of getting by on guile and moxie at the running back position. He wasn't a running back. And he was having to split time in the receiver room and the running back room. And by the end of the year, he was just a running back, but he'd never been a running back. And so now you have a full off season. He's trained to be a running back. I think you're going to see by the end of the season, I think he's going to rush for 1,000 yards. I think he's going to be a Pro Bowl caliber running back at some point. It might not be this year, but I think at some point that's what you'll see from Ty Montgomery.
Let's move over to, because this is already just really infuriating me, the narrative that's being driven here. It really is. We're having a lot of...
Let it out. Let it all out.
So obviously the Mike Glennon situation is incredibly frustrating with how the Bears are framing it and how they refuse to put in the future and let him grow. But we've had the narrative already growing this week where the Trubisky learning from Mike Glennon is the same as Aaron Rodgers sitting behind Brett Favre for several seasons, as some kind of benefit, as the same kind of way of learning behind a Hall of Fame quarterback and a guy who has 22 career starts. What's your view on this? I know you didn't like the draft trade initially, but I imagine you at least agree with us on this, that where this just complete insanity.
Can I curse on this podcast?
You can absolutely curse.
Get the fuck out of here. That's absurd.
Yeah.
It's absurd. I mean, I don't even know where to start. Mike Glennon, fine. Okay. He's going to make a lot of money. Congratulations to him. He's not a good NFL player. The idea that you can just sit behind any NFL player and it's good for your growth is silly. And the idea that you need to sit an inexperienced quarterback in general is actually apocryphal. Justice Mosqueda, who you brought up earlier, he has a stat that basically explains that the guys who attempt fewer than, and there's a threshold that I'm not going to say because I don't want to get it wrong, But I think it's 200 attempts. I just lied. I said I wasn't going to say it, and then I said it.
I think it's something like that, though.
I think it's something like 200 attempts. As a rookie, they basically can't play. And the reason they don't have 200 attempts as a rookie is because they can't play. The idea that you should sit these guys. I mean, look at Jared Goff was terrible last year, right? And he looks not just competent, but potentially like an above average NFL quarterback through 3 weeks this year because he has competent NFL coaching. The coaching is so critical with these quarterbacks. There is, I think, a benefit to playing behind a Hall of Famer. You get to see so much more in terms of the nuances of what it takes. I mean, anyone can relate to this, right? If you have a boss who is awesome, how much better is your life and how much faster do you learn on the job than if you have a boss who kind of sucks or you have a manager who kind of sucks?
I like that analogy.
Like it's applicable to any field of life. And I'll share this anecdote because I absolutely love it. Early on in Aaron Rodgers' career, he watched Favre do things that you shouldn't be able to do. To make off-balance throws, to be able to get incredible velocity on throws with bad footwork, and to throw off platform and off schedule and off rhythm. And so Rodgers, instead of imitating him like I did when I played high school quarterback, Rodgers set about to teach his body to do those things. So he got with his trainer and he said, we're going to develop drills so I can teach my body to move in this way. So the stuff that you see Aaron Rodgers do, that is crazy off platform, that is rolling out and making throws, that is throwing off his back foot, that's throwing off the wrong foot. He practices those things. He worked for months and years to perfect that. It's a skill when he does it. The way that Steph Curry shoots a 30-footer or the way Kyrie Irving makes ridiculous layups off the glass. They practice those things. Yes, they have a certain amount of natural ability, but so much of it is practice. And I think I've pushed back lately on this idea that Aaron Rodgers is the most talented quarterback to ever play. I don't think that's true. I think he has the most ability of any quarterback who's ever played. I don't think he has the most natural talent. He built himself with the help of Mike McCarthy, who never gets enough credit for the coaching that he did. He rebuilt Aaron Rodgers' throwing mechanics from the ground up. But Rodgers worked so hard to do the things that you see him do effortlessly now. And he doesn't get the credit that I think he deserves for the work that he's put in. Now, as it relates to Mitch Trubisky, sure, yeah. Mitch is a talented guy. I never said I didn't like Mitch Trubisky as a player or a quarterback, a person, whatever. I didn't like the trade because I just thought it was silly to trade. Mm-hmm. I didn't like it at 3. I just thought Deshaun Watson was a better quarterback. You know, whatever, that's fine. But I am of the mind after watching Sunday, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about this. 1 catch for 9 yards to a receiver against the Steelers in a game they won. Yep. Couldn't Mitch Trubisky hand the ball to Jordan Howard and hand the ball to Tariq Cohen and throw the ball to Jordan Howard and throw the ball to Tariq Cohen?
Yes.
That's the thing. Exactly.
Absolutely.
Like that's what all the hubbub is about. Like there's no reason for the Bears to be holding back Glennon if this is what they're going to be doing with Glennon. If they're just going to let him go through a first progression or let his first progressions be running backs and be generally awful, why have your placeholder do this instead of the guy that you want at the helm for a decade or longer? Ideally, it's infuriating. It really is. And that's kind of the tug and pull we're at right now. I sure hope Trubisky isn't watching Glennon and learning how to throw passes to receivers' feet and training himself to do that. Just as a note, like Rodgers did with Favre.
I mean, I don't think this is a thing too, right? I don't think you're gonna fall into the trap of modeling bad behavior if you're someone like Mitch Trubisky. I think he's smart enough and self-assured enough to not watch Mike Glennon and go, you know, maybe I should do that.
Yeah, I know.
I just don't think that that's going to happen. But I think here's the problem if you're John Fox. The longer this goes on, the bigger problem that you have. And at a certain point, you risk losing the locker room because they watch the games too. and they see that Mike Glennon is not very good, and Mike Glennon got destroyed against the Buccaneers, and he did next to nothing. And yeah, they won the game, and Fox gives the cliche, he did it, he played well enough for us to win. Well, that's bullshit, because the quarterback wins are not a quarterback stat in the same way that a quarterback playing well enough to win is a complete misnomer, because a quarterback could do nothing and you could win. I mean, how many games have the Seahawks won where Russell Wilson has 120 yards passing? A lot. Tom Brady won a Super Bowl, or excuse me, Tom Brady and the Patriots won a Super Bowl in which he didn't throw for 200 yards against the greatest offense in the history of the sport.
Yeah.
So that whole idea, I'm sorry to get worked up. I'm going to start on the Pythagorean theorem next. I just, it's so infuriating to me. And not that I want to see the more talented player play. If I'm a Packer fan, I don't, but
right.
But like, this is I love this test, the Bill Simmons test. His idea is when you're facing a fourth down or a field goal or any of these sorts of like decisions in a game, you think about what the other team would most want you to do, and you do the opposite. So like if the team wants you, this is a great example. Last week, Deshaun Watson and the Houston Texans have a chance to win the game. On 4th and 2, they kick a field goal to make it a 4-point game instead of trying to get a first down, potentially get a touchdown and seal the game. What did the Patriots want them to do? They wanted them to kick the field goal. What do the Packers and the Vikings and the Lions want the Bears to do? They want them to play Mike Glennon as long as possible, because we know what Mike Glennon is. He sucks. We don't know what Mitch Trubisky is. He could suck too, but he might be good. And if he's good, that's really good for the Bears. So what do the other teams want them to do? Keep playing the guy who sucks.
I just got really depressed. I
can't disagree with that at all.
Especially when it comes from a Packer fan. Andrew, please change the.
You know what? Before we switch, I'm just gonna say that, Pete, I'm really glad that you brought up Aaron Rodgers' mechanics, and I don't want to spend too much time before we move on, but I think that gets lost a lot of times, is that people don't remember that Aaron Rodgers needed to overhaul his mechanics. And like you said, he did a lot of other little things in that amount of time where he was sitting on the bench behind a Hall of Famer, by the way. That shouldn't be lost in this equation either. But let's face it. I mean, I'm sure you watched some tape of Mitch Trubisky coming out of college, and the guy has pretty darn good footwork and mechanics coming out of college already. So I don't think that was a case where he needs to sit and overhaul his throwing motion. You know, he needs to learn how to take snaps. He needs to learn how to get in and out of the huddle, you know, the 40-second clock, the 25-second clock, that sort of thing, you know, managing the actual game, which is different in the NFL than it is in college. But I mean, I think that it gets lost a lot of times that Aaron Rodgers did have some work to do coming out of college, and people forget about that.
Yep.
You know, so I'm glad that you brought that up, because
and let's be fair, Mitch Trubisky has plenty of work to do.
Oh, of course he does, and none of us are denying that. We just
right.
I would rather see him get that work in an NFL game as opposed to on a practice field at Hallis Hall running the scout team, because where does that get you at the end of the day? It gets you nowhere.
Let's move on. We argue with someone about this every week.
I know.
We argue about this with someone every week, Pete. So
I understand. And
all right, Pete.
It's got to be the looming story every week about
it is
about what needs to happen. So you know, I understand. But listen, there are more pleasant things to talk about. Jordan Howard, that guy's a stud, and Tariq Cohen, that guy is scary. He might not be the biggest guy, but man, when he has the ball in his hands, he is freaky. Like as a Packer fan and an observer of the game, whenever he touches the ball, you're
locked in.
Mm-hmm.
Like you want to watch.
Yeah, there are positives. There are positives. So that's what we try to focus on. In a positive, How would you characterize Martellus Bennett's addition so far, both to the team on the field and as a progressive guy, really pushing out politically against Donald Trump and such? What do you think of all that?
As a pass catching player, he's been a net negative. And the reason is because he has had serious issues with drops. He had 3 or 4 just against the Falcons. He had another 3rd down drop against the Bengals. He's had one in every game, at least one. And he's got to get that sorted out. Now, the political part, I love. I love that he's outspoken. I love that he's willing to take a stand. And I don't know if you guys saw this, but the Packers today, basically Aaron Rodgers went to the team and said, I think we should ask the fans at Lambeau on Thursday to lock arms and stand united with us in not just a show of unity and love, which it is, but also in a support for equality. Martellus Bennett, who had sat for the anthem on Sunday with Kevin King and Brett Hundley, and maybe Devontae Adams, I can't quite remember, said he will stand and lock arms with his teammates in this particular gesture. And I don't want to get too bogged down in all of this, but I do want to make this point. I think it's unfair to criticize if you support the kneeling protests, and I do. I think it's unfair to criticize players who don't feel comfortable kneeling. I don't think it should be taken as an indictment from those people of a kneeling protest. And I made this, I offered this example last night with Martellus Bennett. During the anthem before this last weekend, Martellus had been putting his hand in a closed fist in the air during the anthem. Okay? That is a symbol that we are all familiar with, right? Mm-hmm. If I did it, I would look like an asshole. But I support him doing it. I support what it stands for. But I wouldn't feel comfortable doing it. So I feel the same way about what Colin Kaepernick did. I understand why he did it. I understand what it stands for, and I support what he's fighting for. I would not feel comfortable kneeling for the national anthem. And I don't think anyone who does should be viewed as less than, first of all. And I don't think they should be viewed as being anti other people doing it and using their platform in that way. I think that's absurd. And I think what's really cool about this moment right now for Green Bay is because of that, because of the fact that not everyone is comfortable with the anthem, and that part of it has become so distracting to the message that they're trying to get out there, to have not just a prominent voice, but to have a prominent white voice like Aaron Rodgers, a superstar. This is something that Michael Bennett, Martellus Bennett's brother, and Cliff Averill for the Seahawks said last year that they thought it would take a prominent white player like Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers to get involved. I think they're right. And I think this moment where they're going to say, we're not going to kneel and we're not going to ask anyone else to kneel because we understand not everyone is comfortable with that. And I understand that the point here is not to make sure everyone is comfortable, but in order to widen the tent, so to speak, we're going to support something in racial equality, and we're going to use a medium, a vehicle that as a maximum amount of people are going to feel comfortable with. I think that part is really special. And I don't know that it would have happened a year ago if Martellus Bennett had not been on this team.
Yeah, I think that's always been the point with any prominent social movement. You need, like, probably the face of the league, or next to Brady, like you just mentioned, Rodgers, for an objective observer just of the sport and the social constructs. I was kind of pleasantly surprised and amazed at Rodgers' statement today. And I mean, I personally really appreciated it. He's taking out. It's almost as if he understands the gravitas of the moment in a way, and wants.
Yeah, and Richard Sherman was talking about his own quarterback, and the fact that what Trump said sort of galvanized Russell Wilson into feeling like he needed to do a little bit more. And he mentioned that the other premier quarterbacks had not been doing that, and I pushed back on that a little bit on Twitter and caught some grief for that because I felt like Aaron Rodgers had been. And if you go and you look at some of the stuff that he's said about Colin Kaepernick and the protests, I think he's been much more specifically and ferociously supportive of the movement than someone like Russell Wilson. But what I said was, I think what Richard Sherman was insinuating, I think he was referring to Tom Brady.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're all sort of expecting and hoping that Brady will say something because of his association with Donald Trump and the administration and the Patriots as a whole. So I don't know what else to say beyond that, honestly.
Yeah. Let's flip it back to football, Andrew.
Yeah, so on defense, it feels like the Packers are already working with some similar issues in the secondary and the front seven. Even when Mike Daniels isn't wrecking offensive line. So what's the deal here? I mean, why is this continually a problem for the Packers? Year in, year out with the secondary and seemingly the defensive line.
I wish I had an answer for you.
Just frustration.
I think I'd be making a lot of money in Green Bay right now if I had an answer for you, because why do the Chargers constantly have injury problems? I don't know. Why do the Phoenix Suns constantly not have injury problems? Well, they have a great training staff. So I do wonder about the training staff thing. The Packers have changed their approach. They've changed their practice schedule. I mean, they've dug deep into trying to find ways to make this better. I think whoever identifies, and they're working on this, by the way, whoever identifies beforehand players most at risk of tearing their ACL and tearing their Achilles and some of these catastrophic injuries, they are working on not just genetic markers, but other inherent DNA factors and body factors that can cause those injuries. I think whoever unlocks that key there, or unlocks that, has the key to that lock. Let me try and get a metaphor that works. I think that is going to be huge. And I think it's going to change the face of not just football, but pro sports, because NBA teams are going to use it. Baseball teams are going to use it. Soccer teams are going to use it. We just don't have that. And maybe we won't have that. So in terms of like how it can be better, they started not paying guys who had injury problems, and Casey Hayward went to San Diego, and now he's one of the best corners in the league, right? So that didn't work, but they've been trying to draft guys who don't have injury histories. Okay, that's great. Then they get hurt. Ty Montgomery as a rookie, he got hurt. Quentin Rollins, second-year player, first rookie and second-year player, he gets hurt. Demarius Randall played as a rookie, second year. He deals with an injury, a groin injury that requires surgery, and he's in and out of the lineup all year. So I think part of it is luck, part of it is the nature of the game, and I think frankly part of it is the climate. I think the indoor-outdoor thing probably makes them more susceptible to soft injuries. This is just me wildly speculating, but I think the grass, I think, plays a factor. Like David Bakhtiari slipped on grass and strained his hamstring. He did a full split. I don't know if you guys saw the video against the Seahawks. And if he's playing on turf, that just probably doesn't happen. So I do wonder how much that has a factor on it. I'm sure there's been studies done that says that I'm wrong, but anecdotally, that just intuitively it makes sense. I don't know if the facts support it, but that seems like it could be a factor. But given that the Bears, who play on the worst field in the NFL,
yeah, we'd agree with you there.
You'd think that they would be hurt all the time, and they're not. So I mean, they are, but they're not.
We are hurt all the time.
Last year,
we already got 9 players on IR. I mean, and at least 1 or 2 waiting to go on IR. So I mean, it's.
I'd widely speculate with you against the climate too. I mean, Green Bay and Chicago are in mostly similar climates. I mean, we don't have an explanation for it either, to be honest.
Yeah.
All right. So while the two teams more or less know each other, Pete, what are some top matchups to watch out on Thursday for the Bears? Who are some names that people might not know about nationally yet on either side of the ball?
I think Josh Jones. I think if you watch the game on Sunday against the Bengals, you know that name, but otherwise he's a rookie from North Carolina State who he's about 6'1", 220 and runs 4.4. He's a twitchy athlete. And they drafted him as a safety to play linebacker. They said right away, you're going to be our dime linebacker. And when Kentrell Bryce went out last week, who is the Packers' third safety, they played a lot of safeties. They put in Josh Jones, but then with a week to prepare, they did something interesting. Quentin Rollins had been so bad in the slot. And believe me, he had been so bad. I think he had not forced an incompletion all year. I think teams were something like 10 for 10 when targeting him. And they decided, Morgan Burnett, you played some slot corner last year when the Packers defense was super banged up. You're going to play there again. And Josh Jones is going to play the nitro linebacker, which is their nickel linebacker. They have two nickel linebackers, but the nitro backer used to be Morgan Burnett. They sort of coined the nitro backer phrase because it was Morgan Burnett and not a true linebacker. But now Josh Jones is playing there and Burnett is playing in the slot. So that matchup is normally going to be huge against teams that can actually throw the ball. I don't know how it's going to play this week. I'm very interested to see how they use Josh Jones because Jake Ryan is coming back from injury. He's probably the Packers' best run defending linebacker. But Blake Martinez played a great game last year. He's the other linebacker. I think those two guys, Jake Ryan and Blake Martinez, they're the key to the game for Green Bay because they need to be able to run with Jordan Howard in coverage. They need to be able to stop Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen as running backs in the run game and in the pass game. So they're the key. But I do expect Josh Jones to be used as a versatile sort of chess piece moving around, and he has to be the X factor in this game when it comes to defending Tariq Cohen.
So that kind of segues into our last two things. So how can the Bears attack the Packers successfully? What has you concerned as far as what Bears can take advantage of? And then give us your pick.
I think the Vic Fangio defense, which has always defended Rodgers well, I think that is the thing. I mean, I remember 2 years ago on Thanksgiving against a clearly inferior Bears team, and the Packers lost at home on a night when they're honoring Bart Starr because the Fangio defense just totally put the handcuffs on the Packers offense. And that would be the concern if you're a Packers fan. The Bears secondary has improved. Marcus Cooper, Prince Mukamara. I think that's a big boost. Kyle Fuller, who knows, right? I mean, the jury
he's been up and down, but he's been solid.
Yeah, I think the jury is still out on him. He was someone I liked a lot coming out of college, and he played pretty well as a rookie, and then early on at least, and then it was mostly torched since then. So to the point that they needed to go out and sign two new corners. The middle of the field is where the Packers, I think, can most attack the Bears. I think the other way, obviously on the edges, even if Bulaga and Bakhtiari, either or and both, if they play, I think they're going to be less than 100%. And so Leonard Floyd, Pernell McPhee, they need to be big factors in this game. And then if you're the Chicago offense, I think Tariq Cohen in space. When we saw Gio Bernard and Joe Mixon in space last week against the Packers created a lot of problems. I think that's the way that on arrow routes, on Texas routes, on split him out and let him run wheel routes. That's the way that I think the Bears offense can create plays down the field. I don't think the Bears can expect to rely on 8 to 10 play drives and win the game. And I don't think that they can think that they're only going to score 17 points and win the game. That's just not realistic. The Packers are going to score 24. And if they can't get to 24, they can't win. My prediction, I think the Packers, depending on who plays. So right now, given what the injury report is, I think 27-17, 27-21, something like that. I think the Packers win, and I think the cover is a question.
I'd agree with that. I think that's a pretty sound prognostication. Peter, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it, man. He is Peter Bukowski. He writes for Acme Packing Company. FanReact Sports, and he hosts the daily Locked On Packers podcast, which, as I plugged earlier, is actually really great. Even if you're a loyal Bears supporter, I'd highly recommend it. Get that insight. Again, Peter, really appreciate it. This was pretty insightful. I know we ran a little longer than you originally expected, but that was had a blast.
Totally fine. Anytime, guys.
Thanks, Pete.
Thanks, Pete. That's Pete Bukowski. Sorry, so Andrew, let's jump straight into the aftermath.
Yeah, no, actually, it's
Bears.
Yeah, it's interesting because Pete said some things that I had kind of mentioned. Well, I have a what to watch for article that's not out yet, but I actually said that you could pencil in Aaron Rodgers for 24 points against the Bears, which is funny that he just said that same thing pretty much. And I almost had the same score as him that I picked in our predictions as well. So I think it's pretty interesting because I think for somebody on the opposition side to see things more or less the same way that we're seeing them, I think is important because it validates the fact that it's not hyperbole, that we're not talking about Trubisky in a way that's like, a hyperbolic sense.
Where we're not just crazed ranters here.
Yeah, we're not the meatball-y fans or whatever you want to call us.
Everyone else sees it. Everyone else.
Yeah, everybody sees it. They know that Jordan Howard's a good running back. Tariq Cohen is a budding star. I mean, I think people they see it. So it's nice to get that validation that our biggest rival, somebody who knows the Bears because of how often the teams play each other, can recognize the fact that, hey, this team does have some talent. And you know what? They might not be just a quarterback away from being a playoff team, but at least they're on the right path. And I think that was solidified today with Pete on the line.
Yeah, I like that point too. We've kind of discussed this at length. I'm not sure if Trubisky necessarily makes the Bears a playoff team if he starts from the outside or if he came in right now, but they'd certainly be competent. You'd certainly feel more comfortable with him in the game, even as a rookie, taking advantage of this. Just because he can open the playbook more, he'll probably we've discussed this on the previous few times that you've been on with me, where he's probably still going to make the mistakes, but you can actually throw downfield with him at minimum. You can have his athleticism avoiding sacks, and with Mike, and I think the perfect point is there. Like with Mike Glennon, they just in 2 out of 3 weeks. In my opinion, the Steelers and Falcons are 2 top 5 teams in football, and they took them both down to the wire. If not for some blunders by Marcus Cooper, if not for a missed field goal by Connor Barth, they blew out the Steelers. And the Steelers are one of the most explosive teams in football. That's the same case with the Falcons. And you literally went down to the wire with both of them, with nothing under center. And I don't want to be mean to Mike Glennon, but that's essentially what this is. 100 yards passing, 101 yards passing in 2017 might as well equate to nothing. That's like the 2005 Bears winning. The 2005 Bears won 5 games where their passer just barely surpassed 100 yards or was at 100 yards. That's with Kyle Orton. That's with whoever else. You can't have that in 2017, and the Bears just went toe-to-toe with 2 of the best teams in football and did that.
Yeah, and I think you could even make a case that there was 2 and potentially even 3 drop passes from the 5-yard line, and that on that last drive against the Falcons, and you can make a case that not only were they 5 yards away, but on 3 of the 4 plays that they ran, that Mike Glennon actually got the ball to where it needed to be, and the receiver just didn't make the play. And now I get that Josh Bellamy looked like he got hooked a little bit, threw off the timing. I get that Jordan Howard was a little off balance because the ball came out a little bit late. The throw to Miller was a little bit off target. But that being said, an outstanding play by either of those 3 and that game is won. And that's a different story. We're talking about a 2-1 Bears team going into Lambeau Field on Thursday with a chance to, take a commanding lead on the division after 4 games. And who would have ever thought that? So, I mean, if we're talking about having competent quarterback play, I mean, even if the Atlanta Falcons game goes exactly the same way, and you have Mitch Trubisky in the game from the 5-yard line, if one of those plays breaks down, he can at least have the athleticism to run the ball in from the 5-yard line. And that's the added element that I think he brings, even if you don't open up the playbook. It's just having that extra athletic ability, the ability to escape the pocket and actually pick up a first down with your feet. We saw Glennon attempt to run a couple of times against Pittsburgh, and that was just woefully pathetic. I mean, it was awful. I mean, I laughed. I literally laughed while watching the game when he took off a couple times, and I was like, wow.
Yeah, what are you trying to do there? Like,
what is going on here? It was so bad.
I think the other important point to note too that Pete kind of brought up, the Bears are going to try to frame this, especially Fox, are going to try to blame this as quarterback wins. When Glennon, they kind of more or less won in spite of Glennon, and you see the plays, and it was a very weird game on both sides. But Mike Mitchell drops a pick that probably ends the contest if it's actually caught, an almost interception, or Glennon going through his first progressions to running backs. It feels like the Bears have every piece in place but the guy under center. It feels like they are a star quarterback, which has truthfully been the case of their entire franchise history, if we're being honest, or most of it.
Yeah.
But it feels like every other piece is in more or less in place. That they have they're competent enough at every position group, and just need a star quarterback to be relevant, to be a playoff contender, to be a championship contender. I mean, I don't think that's hyperbole. With a star quarterback, this team is special.
I don't disagree. I mean, we've gone over this because, I mean, we have access to the all 22, and we've been over this before with the notion that the receivers aren't open, and it's just been disproven over and over and over again in every game because, let's face it, the receivers are open. And Dowell Loggins, I think, has done a pretty good job of scheming receivers open despite their limitations. So the fact of the matter is that, A, Mike Glennon's just not getting the ball to them, and B, you're starting to see Dowell Loggins call games to just completely take Mike Glennon out of the equation as much as he possibly can. You obviously can't take a quarterback completely out of the game, but the fact that the drive in overtime had 0 passes, their other touchdown drive on offense,
I think
not the one with, but there was no passes on that one either, and that just speaks volumes to me. That if you can't trust your quarterback to throw the ball in overtime because you're worried about him turning the ball over, then what is he doing in the game? I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with it, because the actions speak louder than words, and you can say whatever you want, John Fox, but the fact of the matter is you didn't trust your quarterback to throw it in overtime, and that tells me all I need to know.
We're going to keep having this debate every week, I feel like.
I know, we are.
So give me the odds on Foxy pulling a sly little Foxy on us and announcing that Trubisky's the starter in the morning on Thursday.
If he does it, it won't be in the morning. If he does it, because at this point,
I'm not seriously entertaining this, but I've seen like some of us at WCG already saying this, and I've seen some people entertaining the possibility. I mean, you'll see in our picks tomorrow, EJ and Patty, EJ Schneider and Patty Crow got a little crazy with that. Anyone listening, you'll see. But it's certainly a possibility, just as faint as it is.
Yeah, and I'm not one to ever not put the tinfoil hat on, if given the opportunity. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And let's just say I mean, it's 8:30 p.m. on Tuesday. Okay, so we're talking about 2 days before halftime of the game, or the middle of the second quarter of the Thursday night game against the Packers, right? So at this point, John Fox has not actually said that Mike Glennon is the starter. If you read his comments,
okay,
he was very evasive. And in prior weeks, going into the Pittsburgh week, he was absolutely positively Mike Glennon is our starting quarterback. And I don't remember the exact quote, and I'm not going to pull it up right now and leave dead air here, but he didn't actually come out and say that Mike Glennon is our quarterback. He said something to the effect of that was a reasonable assumption, and that they were going to have to look at film and yada, yada, yada. Well, that to me is not really an answer. So that leaves that door open. The other thing that was interesting to me is in prior weeks, Dal Loggins has been, he's given Mike Glennon some positive feedback, some praise in the media, that sort of thing. And earlier in camp and in preseason, I thought he was really over the top and effusive in his praise of Mitch Trubisky. Well, that kind of flipped the script going into this game. And I thought that was interesting too, because, from the conspiracy theory side of it, you can say, all right, well, Dal Loggins is saying, look over here. And John Fox is going, well, I'm not going to tell you anything because I'm Wiley is a Fox here.
Wiley. So let's just keep using. What does the Fox say? Let's just keep using stupid Fox analogies. Keep going. Keep going.
So if he did say he's not going to give away his starting lineup until right before the game, those were his words. I mean, I'm paraphrasing now, but that's what he said in his presser yesterday. So if you take him at his word and you look at, kind of how everybody's talked about the two quarterbacks and the quarterback situation up to date, I think it's interesting because it's definitely different this week. And you're starting to see the actions and the words kind of coming, converging here heading into the game. So I'd say there's a 10% chance. All right. That's what, you're looking for a handicap. That's it. 10% that right before the game, they don't even announce a starting quarterback. Mitch Trubisky just comes out for the first series, the first play. And that's it. That's how we're introduced to him. Now, in a more reasonable scenario, I could see Mitch Trubisky coming in relief. I think that this is a game that the Bears front office cannot afford to be embarrassed in. And if they truly believe that Mitch Trubisky is their best chance to win, which I believe that they actually do believe that, I think at some point, if Mike Glennon is doing the same old, or he's turning the ball over, I think they pull the plug, because remember it was 3 years ago, and that Packers game, what were they were down by, 30 something points at halftime. This is the one where they ended up giving up 50 points to the Packers and Patriots in back-to-back weeks. And that was the game that Virginia McCaskey said, I'm pissed off, and that ended up leading to the firing of Mark Trestman and Phil Emery. So there is something about the Packers and that rivalry, especially with it being tied up right now. I think that this all sets up for the possibility that Mitch Trubisky actually does come in and comes in relief of Mike Glennon at some point.
Man, I mean, I'm just salivating at the narrative possibilities here. Glennon struggles, gets pulled at the first half. Mitch Trubisky comes in on the road, Lambeau Field, lights on, primetime football, leads the Bears to a crazy last-second victory or something. I'm just his first win, a comeback victory over just hit, and then never looks back. Never looks back. Takes his team by the reins after taking back the series lead for the Bears. I'm just a little boy dreaming right now. I'm stuck in fantasy land. I mean, maybe it could happen. We'll see how that plays out. Let's jump over to when we were talking about this kind of with Pete. I mean, Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen. I'm out of superlatives almost to describe them. The Bears had 60 offensive plays on Sunday, and the two combined to sort of touch the ball for 44 of those 60 plays. One of Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen touched the ball on 44 of the Bears' 60 offensive plays. That is absolutely ridiculous. Well, either as a receiver or taking the ball or taking the ball as a ball carrier. They both combined for 256 scrimmage yards, receiving and running. And the Steelers knew that it was going to be either one of those two every time. I mean, the Steelers are a good football team. They have a smart head coach. They're not afraid of Mike Glennon. They were daring him to make throws. They were loading the box. And Howard and Cohen, there they are, making guys look silly, burrowing over them, patient zone running for Howard. And then kind of in his own – I wrote about this in his own Walter Payton pseudo-flu game, continually burrow into his shoulder, agonizing in pain, the kind of game you talk about legends when you talk about like a player decades later, what you remember about him. And Cohen just on his almost touchdown that he was definitely in bounds. Let's get that out of the way. Over time, he was definitely in bounds. His explosive run that kind of made you reminded you a little bit of Devin Hester. I mean, Rumble Pack and Joystick, that is their nickname, everybody. We will not speak about anyone that says otherwise. Jack Silverstein. Rumble Pack and Joystick, this is a special duo. It might be the best. I hesitated to say this after week one, but it might be the best duo in the NFL right now. And the Bears are well-equipped. They're well-equipped there in the backfield.
Yeah, I'm not going to hesitate to say it. I'm going to go ahead and say that they are the best duo in the NFL.
Say the Rumble Pack and Joystick. So
Rumble Pack and Joystick is the best running back duo in the NFL.
And the best nickname.
Okay. So you saw it a little bit in week one against Atlanta, but you really saw Jordan Howard struggle against Tampa. And I more or less just take the whole Tampa game and I just throw that in the trash because
it never happened.
That game really just was trash. And it started with the 3 interceptions or the 2 interceptions and the fumble and the Tariq Cohen play. I mean, it was just bad all around. So let's just wipe that game off the face of the earth. But you saw the Jordan Howard from last year on Sunday. You saw the vision. He just the patience and the vision, the way that he ran the ball was what we saw last season. And I think that the problem that we've had with Jordan Howard so far this year is it's not been that his shoulder has been bothering him. It's not that, he got laser corrective surgery and he doesn't see the hole the same way or whatever kind of crazy scheme you want to come up with, sophomore slump, yada, yada, yada. I don't think that's the case at all. I think that the case is he just needed to be fed the damn ball because, look, he had 13 carries for 52 yards, 4-yard average, not so bad, but he had almost none of those carries in the second half. I think he had 4 of those carries in the third quarter and none in the fourth quarter. Same thing with Tampa. He only had 9 carries in the Tampa game. I mean, again, let's just throw that one in the trash. But he had 23 carries against Pittsburgh, all right? That's what the kind of number that we need to see. So when Pete was talking about magic numbers for Ty Montgomery, for Jordan Howard, the magic number of carries, I'm not talking about touches, carries is 20 for me. He needs to at least carry the ball 20 times. So I think when he gets lathered up, as people like to say, and myself included, for a running back, it's all about getting into a rhythm and feeling how the line is blocking that particular defensive front on that particular day. It's not something that happens on the first carry of the game or the 5th carry of the game. It might happen in the 15th carry, right? So you need to work up to that. You need to keep hitting them, those body blows, and eventually Jordan Howard's going to break off big runs because Jordan Howard does that. I mean, remember that run he had? It was a 3rd down. and he got stopped like 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage. And then he broke like 3-4 tackles, drug guys over that first down marker. And I was like, my mind was just
that's
exploding.
You know what was more impressive about that play? That was after he injured his shoulder where he was lying in agony. So he came out for 5 plays, and his first play is a 3rd and 2. Is that 3rd and 2? So and then if you watch the replay, he takes a shot immediately to that shoulder from those 2 Steelers defenders, and it's almost like they're not even there. He kind of shrugs them off and just like plods down like the tank he is, 15-yard gain, first down. That's special. Like I wrote about this in my post-game reaction. Like I just said it too. That was the first of his flu games. That performance on Sunday is what people will reference, even if these Bears aren't going to be a playoff team, if they're not going to be relevant. That Bears team that Peyton was on, where he had the flu game, they weren't special either. But you remember the effort and the sacrifice and just like the style of running that came out of it, even while under such duress. Jordan Howard was transcendent on Sunday. I think that's fair to say.
I completely agree. And then the other side of the coin, Tariq Cohen. I think for my money, I thought that the first 2 games of the season that they may have been a little too Tariq Cohen happy, a little too joystick happy.
I mean, they still used him a lot against the Steelers, to be fair.
Yeah, they did, but I think they used him a little bit differently. I don't think they targeted him as many times in the passing game and used him more in the running game. And in the passing game, I think that they did the smart thing, which is use him more as a decoy. And for me, I think when you're thinking about this from the perspective of X's and O's and game planning and how to set up your opponent for later in the game, I think that early on in the game, Tariq Cohen's the best way to utilize him is as a decoy. Line him up in the slot, do those little fake end arounds, hand the ball off to Jordan Howard, those types of things, because Jordan Howard is going to be – he's a bruising running back. He's physical. He's going to wear down defenses. And later on in the game, when those guys are tired, those big guys in the trenches, they are tired, they are gassed, they are winded, and then they're going to have to come in and tackle Tariq Cohen. And they're just not going to be able to get a hand on him because he's too quick and he's too fast, and his moves are just – they're unbelievably good. So that's how I would do it. I would start with Jordan Howard, and I'd bring in Tariq Cohen kind of in the middle of the game once you get people on their heels a little bit. And he's the kind of guy that you saw it against Pittsburgh. I agree he didn't step out of bounds in that play, but that was a 73-yard run, okay? When was the last time you saw a Bears running back or a Bears player go for 73 yards and look like that? That was the kind of highlight that I sit there and I watch other teams have, and the Bears never have.
Well,
we had Devin Hester. That's different.
But still, but that was.
I'm talking about an offense, though. We just never had a guy on offense who did that sort of thing. I mean, Matt Forte was a nice player. Don't get me wrong. He was a good player. He was a better receiver than he was a runner. But to have a handoff, make that first quick cut, and then kind of suck in the guy on the edge, and then just run right around him, and then tiptoe down the sidelines, and then make a couple of cuts, weaving in and out, to score a touchdown. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that it just blows your mind. You're like, wow, that is unbelievable. And that was the most exciting play I've seen from a Bears player in a really long time. I mean, since Devin Hester for sure.
I think what's also understated for these two, and why you saw the Bears running game have a little bit more success, was Kyle Long's return, who was just mauling guys, especially in that first touchdown drive. And in general, I personally expected a little more rust, considering he hadn't played a game in almost 10 months and really didn't participate much in training camp, and hasn't been. But it didn't seem like that at all. He was the Bears' best offensive lineman on the field, and was indeed I think the kind of, for this team, the way they're constructed with Glennon right now, he might be the most integral piece that no one will talk about, because he's a hog up front. He's not the guy that's getting. He's obviously that's how it's always going to be. He's not going to get the press clippings the way Howard and Cohen do. But even though he's the one creating the holes for them, he was special. And I often say how he's a little overrated, but he again might be the most important player for this offense right now. He kind of showed out a little. He showed out a little bit in that regard.
Yeah, and I think it's been a little understated, but it's starting to pick up a little bit of steam. But I think that Adam Shaheen, I thought, blocked really well in that game, and so did Deontay Thompson. I think that
Shaheen and Thompson,
especially later in the game,
Shaheen and Thompson had the game-sealing blocks on Howard's game winner.
Yeah, no, they totally did. And you saw them running a lot to the left because they were trying to preserve Jordan Howard, and he was carrying the ball exclusively in his left arm, more or less from the middle of the third quarter on. So they started just running the ball to the left with him almost exclusively. So you saw a lot of those plays going to the same side, and Leno and Shaheen or Sims and Deontay Thompson were really working well as a unit on that side. And I think Dan Durkin had a graphic out earlier today on Twitter. It might have been Fishbane. It was somebody over the Athletic, though. And, off of Charles Leno Jr.'s inside shoulder, they were rushing for like 9 yards a carry, and then outside his outside shoulder. So, basically the outside stretch play was going for like 11 or 12 yards a pop. I mean, it was just unbelievable going off that left side. They were just murdering people. So, and I also think I think the word is that we're expecting Josh Sitton to suit up.
He will probably be playing on Thursday. The Bears don't really practice this week. It's just walkthroughs in a short week, but the expectation is that he will be back in the lineup after a 1-game absence. Yes.
Yeah, so, I mean, this will be the first game the entire season where we'll have the
entire offensive line.
Yeah, the full offensive line healthy and playing together. So that's really exciting to me because I think the matchup against the Packers is the running game versus the run defense. That is where that game is going to be won and lost, in my opinion, at least for the Bears' offensive side. So, that's a really good matchup for the Bears, and I think getting Sitton and Long back, with the way that Howard and Cohen are coming off of that last game against Pittsburgh, I think that I think they're looking for another huge game, both of them.
We're kind of moving on to talking a little Packers, but we can still reference some from the Steelers stuff. Leonard Floyd, everyone knows he's the light of my life. He's just everything. He's everything to me. I would do anything for him, Andrew. I really would. I would do anything for him.
I know you would, Robert.
I would do anything for him. He hasn't been the pass rushing force that anyone expected to start the season so far. He has 0 sacks, official sacks, logged several tackles, and there's been concern as to why that's happened. To be fair, the Bears have played 2 of the 3 teams that they've played or have probably 2 top 5 offensive lines in Atlanta and Pittsburgh, but that still doesn't excuse it. Against the Green Bay, he's going to have a better opportunity with all of these injuries they have on the offensive line. Even if Bakhtiari and Bulaga do come in and are inserted, they're not going to be 100%, so he's going to be able to kind of have an opportunity to have his way against them. But I'm concerned at how the Bears are using him, which is, to me, why he's struggling. He's dropped back on almost 20% of every play that he's been in on this year. And he's played 90% of the defensive snaps the Bears have had. Only Kyle Fuller, Marcus Cooper, and Eddie Jackson have more defensive snaps than Leonard Floyd. And they're guys in the secondary. That's not as much wear and tear, or I know that this wouldn't make logical sense, but playing the edge, playing as a hybrid 3-4 outside linebacker is a little more taxing, and playing 90% of the snaps there is that's going to wear a guy down, especially when he's dropping back a bit. Mm-hmm. The next closest guy as far as an edge complement to Floyd is Will Heon at 90. So Floyd is almost doubling who should be like, who was almost doubling the play time of like of the guy that's starting next to him, effectively, or who has started next to him in Willie Young. That's crazy. And that's limiting to what Floyd can able to do. To be fair, he hasn't won one-on-one when he's had the opportunity either. You saw him miss a sack against Roethlisberger that, luckily enough, ended up incomplete deep to Martavis Bryant. But otherwise, when he's had his rare one-on-one opportunities, he's not winning with the same leverage simply because he's not used to it, and he doesn't have that same confidence level. Because most often, when the Bears actually do rush him, he's been double-teamed, he's been chipped. And because the teams don't really have to fear Will Young or Pernell McPhee as much. Those guys were winning battles in the fourth quarter more or less because of the attention being paid to Floyd. But this can't continue. For me, he's probably the most important player on the field. Really, in all honesty, he's the most important player on the field for them defensively almost every game. He's their best defensive player. That's why you have him so high up in snaps. That's why the Bears trust him to use in coverage, because they've been playing such athletic teams. But against the Packers, he can't have an 0 for sack-wise. He can't have 0 pressures. He has to have the kind of game, especially with that injury situation, he has to have the kind of game that he had last year in Lambeau, where he had 2 sacks, a forced fumble, a touchdown. He's in Rodgers' face and hurry, and he has – effectively, this has to be his breakout game of the year. I think it will be, provided the Bears use him properly, provided they give him more of a spell, provided, Pernell McPhee can continue to play at least 30 snaps, Willie Young can continue to offer a little bit more. Because if it continues at the rate it currently is, he's not going to have that hyped up season that I was driving him originally to be. Which the sacks will come. I believe they do, as long as there's an adjustment made. I know that was a little long rant, but he's that important.
No, I don't disagree with you at all. And the way I look at this is, if you are taking Leonard Floyd and dropping him into coverage, you are now weakening 2 different positions. And I say that because you're not rushing him. He's your best rusher, your best edge rusher. So you're not rushing him on that play. And then by dropping him into coverage, you're basically taking a receiver that would normally be covered by a defensive back, and you're putting a guy who's, 6'6", 245 pounds on him. That's a mismatch every time. I mean, Leonard Floyd is freakishly athletic for his size, but he's not freakishly athletic for a wide receiver. They're going to outquick him and outrun him every time. So I don't really understand it. And personally, I like what Pete was talking about the Packers doing, and I had mentioned this on the 2 Minute Drill podcasts yesterday. And
Andrew's podcast, follow that along. That was Andrew's his personal Bears podcast. Follow along. It's pretty great. Anyway, continue.
So they're calling it the Nitro package. I didn't really. I called it a hybrid, safety linebacker. But with Quinton Demps going out for maybe not the season, but at least for 6 weeks or so for a fractured forearm. So the way I look at this is, you have an opportunity here to get your best secondary on the field. And the way that I do this is, I basically make Kyle Fuller a safety with Eddie Jackson, and Adrian Amos becomes your hybrid safety linebacker. So he's playing in the box basically exclusively, unless he's covering, a tight end in zone coverage close to the line of scrimmage, something like that, or a fullback, a back coming out of the backfield, that sort of thing. I don't want him going downfield, though. I'd rather have him close to the line of scrimmage, where I think he's more effective. So that really puts your best coverage players on the field at the same time, with Amukamara on one side, Cooper on the other, and Callahan playing, the nickel. So I also think what that does is, if you have 6 defensive backs, I literally wouldn't even have a linebacker out there. When they spread you out, I'd go 6 defensive backs and 5, linemen and outside linebackers, and just come after him with 5.
that might be the kind of hybrid. That might be the kind of hybrid defense the Bears have run with Fangio against the Packers before. And to me, though, Aaron Rodgers is more of a fire-breathing dragon than Matt Ryan and Ben Roethlisberger. He's the kind of guy he's probably the one player in the league that can win a game by himself, if we're being in all honesty, especially when the other team isn't a Titan necessarily. The Bears aren't a Titan yet. But weapon-wise, you don't necessarily have to worry as much about what the Packers are doling out there than the Falcons and Steelers. They're not as explosive. It's almost exclusively Rodgers. I mean, Devontae Adams, Jordy Nelson, Ty Montgomery, Randall Cobb, Geronimo Allison, all those, that's not the same as Tevin Coleman, Devontae Freeman, Mohamed Sanu, Julio Jones, Austin Hooper, Martavis Bryant, Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell. These are some of the biggest names in the sport. And aside from Nelson, who's on the downswing of his career, the Packers don't have that. In that respect, I think that's been part of – so I would employ your defensive scheme, and I would more or less tell Leonard Floyd he can pin his ears back on that one, because you're not going to need him in coverage. You're not going to need your best versatile athlete in space against the Packers because they don't have that kind of offense. This is going to be the first kind of game where I kind of noted it in our overreaction with Josh Sunderbrook. This is going to be the first game where the Packers don't have a bad offense because they have Aaron Rodgers, but they kind of have a mediocre offense otherwise, outside of Rodgers.
A very mediocre.
A mediocre offense. So this is the kind of game where Floyd, and your best players and your best scheme can shine out. This is the kind of game where you'll see later on this season against Carolina, against Baltimore, against other mediocre offenses they have left on their schedule, where it'll be like they're stat padding some of these defensive guys. It'll be like Floyd and the secondary stat padding. That's the most effective thing here.
Yeah, one more thing about Leonard Floyd, and I think that this is something that's affecting him as well, is I honestly believe that pass rushers and running backs are very similar in that they have to get into a rhythm. They have to get into a groove. There's a timing aspect of it.
And confidence.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And confidence too. So it's getting those reps, and it's being able to, set up the guy that you're going up against, the offensive lineman you're going up against with counter moves later in the game. It's the same thing with a running back. They have to get lathered up. They have to get in a groove. And there's a timing to every offensive lineman and how they drop, where they drop, their landmarks, different things like that. Every lineman is a little bit different. They use their hands a little bit different. They drop to a certain landmark, in a different spot. They do it in a different timing. And I think that when you're disrupting Leonard Floyd and dropping him into coverage, he's not able to get into that rhythm. And what I would like to see is, even if I don't think you have to worry about the Packers running game. Yeah, I get that Ty Montgomery burned us last season, 163 yards. I don't see that happening again. That running offense is
they
atrocious.
Just held Le'Veon Bell to 60 yards. I know you don't think he's an elite runner, but that's still a great running back. I think he's better than Montgomery, certainly.
Same thing with Tevin Coleman and
every running attack they faced.
Yeah, they haven't given up crap. I mean, they're giving up 80 yards a game basically on the ground, 83 I think, something like that. So and they're only giving up 3.5 yards carry, 3.6 I think they're giving up on the ground. So they've pretty much been shutting people down, and this is the worst running game that they've faced so far.
They've faced.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Outside of Rodgers.
So if I'm Vic Fangio, I'm telling Leonard Floyd, Pernell McPhee, Willie Young, Akeem Hicks, Eddie Goldman, all these guys, just go get the quarterback. You might get gashed once or twice in the running game. No big deal. I'm not going to fault you for that. I'm not going to make you run laps. Go get Aaron Rodgers. Get in his face. Be there every single play. Do not let him breathe. That would be what I would do.
And they have that opportunity. You've seen it against Atlanta and Seattle, Cincinnati. Those teams feasted on Rodgers because that was the focus to get in there. The Bears have that same opportunity. Hopefully hopefully they take advantage in that regard. All right, Andrew, let's get to – we've kind of broken down the matchups here. We've broken down the keys to the game more or less. The running game and the pass rush. That's the gist I got. We didn't say specifically, but that's the gist I got, right? Because Glennon's not going to win this game. As much as we might think he'll open up the game, or as much as Trubisky might come in at the second half, the Bears are going to have to win this game on the strength of their running game, Cohen and Howard, and using those guys effectively, and letting your pass rushers just get back there. In the words of Lawrence Taylor, get back there like crazed dogs. Like fucking crazy dogs, to be clear. I think that's what Lawrence Taylor said once. You know what I'm talking about, the NFL Films clip?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I know exactly what you're talking about. And
that's the key here. That's the goal.
Yeah, you're spot on. I mean, that's how you bother Aaron Rodgers. That's how they did it 2 years ago on Thanksgiving. And let's face it, this is a kind of piss poor Packers defense that they're facing here too. And I think that they're a little bit better against the pass than they are against the run. They're not a good run defense, and the Bears have a really good run offense. So I think that this is one of those games, and I get a weird feeling about it. I'm still not picking the Bears, but
don't say that. Don't spoil it. Hold on, we haven't gotten there yet. Continue.
But I get this odd feeling about this game. There's just, the more I talk about it, the more. Oh, God,
you're doing it. You're doing it. You're talking yourself into it.
I know. The matchup it seems better than it has. It has a different feel than it has in years past, and that's including the Glennon factor, which anybody who knows me knows that I have no use for Mike Glennon whatsoever. So it's interesting. I definitely have weird vibes. My spidey sense is up on this game, you know?
We'll talk about it. We'll make our final assessment at the end of our picks here. We're gonna, as I did it with EJ last week, we're gonna alternate here, Andrew. So Bears Packers will go last, even though it's the first game of the week. All right, first up is Saints at Dolphins. I think the Saints were surprised everyone a little bit, beating down Cam Newton and the Panthers. They're on the road at the Dolphins. The Dolphins also kind of had laid a bit of an egg against the Jets. I think the Dolphins are the better team. I think they're more complete on both sides of the ball. I'm not going to buy into the Saints because they more or less beat down a really, really bad offense, one of the worst offenses in the league. And I'm going to take Jay Cutler and the Dolphins to go to 2-1. Titans at Texans. Andrew, you're up.
Titans at Texans. I think that
Deshaun Watson balled in Foxborough. Let's note that. Let's note that, my boy, my other boy.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely played well. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the Titans because I think that I think that the Texans kind of blew their wad a little bit in that game. I think they got up for it. They were excited about beating the Patriots. They played them tough right up to the end and just came up short. And I think that they're going to, their bubble burst. They're deflated a little bit. And I think that the Titans are going to come and beat them.
Jaguars at Jets. Jaguars kind of an early season surprise so far. Beat down the Ravens in London, 44-7. Really wasn't even close. And the Jets, I'm not sure what to make of them. I thought they were the worst team in football. I mean, who would have thought that they would kind of outclass the Dolphins so well? But I really like that Jaguars front seven. I like Calais Campbell. I like Yannick Ngakoue. And I think they're gonna have their way with New York. That probably, this game won't be close for Jacksonville. This is a team. The Jacksonville Jaguars, Andrew, are going to be 3-1. Think about that. They're going to be 3-1. Panthers. Yeah, I know. It happens. It's been a weird season.
Yeah.
Panthers at Patriots. So Patriots coming off a thrilling victory over the Texans, late Tom Brady touchdown pass, while the Panthers kind of obviously reeling at this rate.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the Panthers. Even when they went to the Super Bowl, I didn't think that team was as good.
That team was a juggernaut. That team was a juggernaut on both sides of the ball. I mean, their offensive line was flawed, but they were clearly the best team in the NFC.
Oh, but they had no wide receivers. Their only really receiving option was Greg Olsen. And Cam Newton played out of his mind that year. Now Cam Newton is playing more to his career numbers, which if you took off the name and put player A and player B, and you put, Jay Cutler's numbers up against Cam Newton's minus the rushing yards and touchdowns, they're virtually the same player. So I know people don't ever believe me, but if you actually go ahead and do it, they're very close. So I'm taking the Patriots. I've never been a fan of Cam Newton. I think that he's a good player. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think he's in that upper echelon. And I think when you have an upper echelon quarterback on the other side, they usually end up winning. So I'm taking the Patriots.
Lions at Vikings. So this will be for first place in the NFC North, effectively. I mean, unless if the game goes in if the other NFC North game goes in the way that we don't expect. I know people will say the Lions are kind of up at the upswing. They took the Falcons down to the wire. They had an impressive 2-0 start, but I'm still not going to buy into them. That defense is a sieve, to be clear. And the Vikings, even with Case Keenum, that's one of the more complete teams in the league. That's one of the more talented teams in the league, and they're at home. And I expect them to take care of business against Detroit. Bills at Falcons.
Real quick about Vikings
Okay.
Lions. The NFC North is just kind of crap this year, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
That's why the Glenn and Trubisky thing is so confounding, because I feel like this division's winnable with 8 wins, maybe 9. I mean, I don't think there's any team that's good enough to run away with this thing. All right, that's why.
Absolutely. Bills at Falcons.
Bills at Falcons.
Bills coming off a brilliant win over the Broncos, where Von Miller got a 15-yard penalty for pulling off the too slow trick.
Yeah, Falcons, and it's not even going to be close.
Working off of that luck. Steelers or Ravens, rivalry game. Steelers trying to recover from getting destroyed by the Bears, emotionally scarred by the Bears, while the Ravens were actually emotionally scarred by the Jaguars. The Steelers are the better team. They're going to rebound here. They're an elite team. This is a team that's still probably going to play in the AFC Championship game. I predicted them to get there. I know it's a rivalry game, so the Ravens kind of know them, but I don't expect this to be close. Bengals at Browns, so another AFC North matchup.
Oh, man.
Browns getting a beat down from the Colts, and the Bengals choking away a game against the Packers with Tony Romo ripping Andy Dalton relentlessly.
You know what? And I think that I think that pretty much kills him. I think that Marvin Lewis has probably lost that team at this point, or is right about there. I know it's early in the season, but I think Marvin Lewis has been on the outs for a while in Cincinnati, and I think this is probably finally the time for him to go. I'm taking Cleveland. I like the upset there. I don't even know if that's an upset, but I'm taking it.
I've taken Cleveland for the 3 straight weeks, and they've let me down. I'm going to take them again. They are going to beat the Bengals. Andy Dalton's too flawed a quarterback. I think Myles Garrett might be returning this week too, so that'll give the boost to that defense, and he'll terrorize Andy Dalton a little bit. Don't quote me on that. I didn't say that, but I'm definitely going to say this next week. Rams at Cowboys. Oh, wait, I don't know why I picked that game. We were alternating, but anyway, Rams at Cowboys. All right, so Jared Goff's kind of been surprising. We noted it a little bit with Peter. It's crazy what competent coaching and a talented offense can do for you, but he seems to be an above-average quarterback right now at the 3 games, coming off of a thrilling win over the Niners on Thursday Night Football, a game that nobody expected. While Dak Prescott's kind of been struggling, I know he had some explosive plays against the Cardinals, but he hasn't been the same. The offensive line isn't protecting him the same. The defense isn't the same as it was last year. Ezekiel Elliott isn't running in the same fashion he was last year. I know the Cowboys are at home, but I think the Rams are a better team right now. I know that's probably an upset as much, but I think the more talented and the better team wins out here. I think the Rams in a down NFC West might be the best team in that division, in all honesty. I know it's early, but it certainly seems like it. They have if Russell Wilson keeps playing the way, and Seattle keeps playing the way he is, and the Cardinals, I really don't know what to make of them with Carson Palmer and a team that should be on the downswing, but that's somehow still fighting. I think the Rams are the best in that division. It's really winnable, and they're going to take care of business here. Eagles at Chargers. 61-yard field goal. Brilliant victory for the Eagles, and the Chargers are continuing to be the Chargers.
Yeah. This is in San Diego?
This is, excuse me,
Or,
Los Angeles.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Don't get the NFL mad at you now.
In Los Angeles. I'll take the Eagles on the road. I don't like that game at all. I don't think either one of those teams is all that great, but I'll take the Eagles.
Giants at Buccaneers. So Giants probably in position to draft Josh Allen and ruin their future for the next 10 years. At this rate, the way their season's going, looking like one of the worst teams in football.
Yeah, who would have thought that, huh? Start the season.
Well, that's what happens when you don't have an offensive line and your defense doesn't play to the same elite level that it did last year, carrying you to an 11-5 record. So the tough downswing. And to be in all fairness, Eli Manning does look washed up. While the Buccaneers just got blown out by the Vikings. I'm not a huge fan of the Bucs. I've said often that Jameis Winston's incredibly overrated. I don't think he's that good of a quarterback. And I think that the Bears kind of more or less gave that game away and were demoralized by the end by Mike Glenon's just horrendous play. I think that was a winnable game that they never really had a shot in, where the Bears were actually the better team, but faltered. And I'm going to pick the Giants to get their first win here. I think the defense is going to abuse Winston a little bit. I think Eli's going to have a little bit better time, even despite his terrible offensive line. And I think the Lions got their first win. 49ers or Cardinals?
I think that the Cardinals are in just a tailspin right now. So I am going to take the 49ers for the upset.
You just say Brian Hoyer going into Arizona, huh? And Brian with Carlos Hyde. Okay.
Yeah, they played really well last Thursday against the Rams. And I'll tell you what, that's another team that the Bruce Arians-led Cardinals are just they feel to me like a team that isn't all – they're not all pulling on the same side of the rope. You know what I mean? Yeah. So they feel like the Bengals to me. Like this is a team that once was in that not upper echelon, but they were in that playoff team kind of tier of NFL team. And I think that they're tuning out their coach and their quarterback is bad. And that's a recipe for disaster. And I know there's some speculation that Bruce Arians might quit at the end of the year, some things like that. But I don't think that's lost on the team. And I think that they're playing that way. So there you go.
Raiders and Broncos, pivotal AFC West game, one of the probably the best division in football. I think you agree with the Chiefs and the Raiders and the Broncos and the Chargers. Even the Chargers, yeah. The Chargers are the best winless team in football. We can say that. And this is a pivotal game there. Raiders uncharacteristic. I was kind of shocked by that Redskins blowout on Sunday night, but that's what happens when you don't have an elite defense and when an overrated Derek Carr isn't playing up with the weapons and offensive line he has in front of him. They're on the road in Denver, and I think this is an easy one. I know you like Trevor Siemian. I'm not a huge fan of his, but they're in their home environment, and that defense is equipped to take away what the Raiders do best, while Trevor Siemian can take advantage of a below-average defense outside of Defensive Player of the Year, Khalil Mack. So I think the Broncos get here, and the Raiders, who were a really hyped team coming into the year, get to 500. That'll be kind of a shock to a lot of people, but not at this rate. Sunday Night Football, Colts at Seahawks. Ooh, this might be an ugly game. Just like not an ugly game in terms of a blowout, just like an ugly played football game.
Wow, yeah, that's a bad.
Jacoby Brissett in Seattle. Oh man.
So I'm taking the Seahawks, and really the only reason I'm taking them is because I think that the Colts are so bad that there's enough talent on Seattle that they're gonna still win that game. And I don't know about handily, but I think that they're going to win it, and it's not going to be super close. It'll be like one score, like a touchdown or more, somewhere in there. But I just think that there's still too much talent on Seattle's team for them to not be able to, maybe make some things happen on defense or special teams. They do have some players there. So I see that going to Seattle.
Monday Night Football, Redskins and Chiefs. You might have the best team in the league right now playing at home in Kansas City. And the Redskins are a bit of a surprise. They might be the best team in their own division if you take a look at the landscape of the NFC East. That being said, the Chiefs are firing in all cylinders right now. They frankly look unbeatable. They've been just destroying everybody. And I don't expect that to change against an inferior Washington team. Chiefs get to 4-0 here. And finally, we're both going to pick this game, obviously. All this history on the line. For the first time since 1933, the Packers can take the all-time series lead against their hated charter franchise rival Bears. If you buy into that narrative, it means everything. It probably does mean something to a lot of people. It does mean something to me, but it's not really as much as just in general getting this Bears team off of the schneid and getting them back into relevancy. Andrew, let's make our pick. You go first. And pick a score.
Yeah, I alluded to it earlier. I'm going with the Packers, 23-13. If Mike Glennon starts this game, Dom Capers has just always had the Bears number, and it doesn't matter who's the quarterback, doesn't matter who's the head coach, doesn't matter who is on the Bears. He just seems to be able to dial up that magic pressure, the magic, plays. He knows how to get turnovers against the Bears. And like I said, doesn't matter who's quarterback, doesn't matter who's on the roster. Just knows how to get it done. Against
everybody else, he's an awful defensive coordinator. The Packers are gashed, but against the Bears, but to be fair, that was more or less him having the edge against Jake Cutler, because Jake Cutler was never good against the Packers on a consistent level. Maybe Mike Glennon is now a Packer killer, or at least the rest of the Bears offenses. We're not sure. But anyway, go on.
Yeah. And then there's always Aaron Rodgers. He just seems to – really, how many clunkers has Aaron Rodgers had against the Bears? I know he's 15-4. One of those 4, I believe, was him breaking his collarbone. Was it not?
It wasn't against the Bears, no. Oh, no, it was. It was
Shane McClellan.
Yeah, it was Shane McClellan on Monday Night Football, so he got that loss, yeah.
So he takes the loss, even though he only played like a quarter or a quarter and a half. I think it was in the middle of the second quarter that happened. So that's one of those losses. The other one of the other 4 is, 2 years ago on Thanksgiving, which was Vic Fangio. And I think that if you combine the 2 performances by the defense in 2015, that does give me a glimmer of hope that they can hold down that offense a little bit. But still, they were scoring 21, 23, 24 points in those games. I still think that that's where they're at. And without defensive, takeaways, special teams, turnovers, huge plays in special teams, that sort of thing, I don't think that the Bears offense can score enough points to keep up with the Packers, even if the Bears have a good game against their offense. That's just where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Packers 24-20, and it's going to be that kind of game where they more or less, they're probably going to, I think they're going to get up early on Green Bay because everything is more or less in their favor. Banged up offensive line, kind of game where the pass rushers can tee off on Rodgers a little bit. Running game isn't going to have an issue getting going. And they're going to have the early lead, and it'll be much like where it was with Cincinnati, where an inferior quarterback eventually helps the Packers get back into the game, and you'll have late magic from him with a late touchdown pass to seal it and take over that series lead. Listen, I like you. The Fangio defense gives me hope that the Bears can kind of hold them down and maybe give Mike Glennon a chance, but Glennon isn't going to win this game. It's going to have to be the same recipe as it was against the Steelers. The Bears are going to have to get some bounces in their favor. They're going to have to continue to get those bounces where Glennon drops a snap and he gets it right back, or Bobby Massey conveniently being right there when Tariq Cohen fumbles. They're going to have all the fortune in their way. As much as the Packers are probably the least complete team they've played so far, that's just the nature of the beast when you're playing a fire-breathing dragon like Rodgers and against a coordinator like Don Capers, like as you noted, that knows them so well. If they can get some takeaways to compensate for how lethargic their offense will be at times, where they're not going to score 30 points, but Eddie Jackson gets a pick, or Prince Mukamara gets a pick, or Tariq Cohen, or whoever else makes a big play at special teams, or Marcus Cooper actually runs in a blocked field goal this time, then they'll have a chance. But that's a lot to ask to happen on 2 consecutive weeks. I think you get a spirited effort from the Bears. I think you see the Bears seeing a wounded animal, much in the similar way where the Bears were a wounded animal against the Steelers, but they won't be able to finish the job. I like this matchup for the Bears. I like what's the potential here, but I will believe that they go in and again into Lambeau and beat down Rodgers and demoralize them when I actually see it, because they don't do that on a consistent level yet. Maybe they'll do it when they have Mitch Trubisky in. Maybe they'll do it now, but I have to actually see it. It's just one of those things. It's just I need the actual evidence before I can confidently pick them against a team that's owned them for such a long time. As much as the tide is likely turning now, as much as the tide is likely turning.
Yeah, we're in the same place at it. We just see them getting there, a different way. But I just don't think that game plan against Pittsburgh.
It's not sustainable.
No, it's not. And look, we did this exercise, offline before, we hopped on, that, there was a lot of bounces. That game was so weird. And there was a lot of bounces that went, both ways. And if any one of those changes, it changes the outcome of that game. There was 5 fumbles, 4 of them were recovered by the Bears.
There was Martavis Bryant dropping a deep bomb. There was Marcus
on the first play of the game.
On the first play of the game, there was Marcus Cooper not running it all the way in, and the Bears only getting 3 points out of it.
Marcus Cooper dropped a pick.
Mike Mitchell dropped a pick.
They dropped one in the end of the fourth quarter. I mean, that would have changed the game drastically right there. I mean, there was just so many weird bounces in that game and different outcomes that completely altered the final score and the final outcome of that game, that you cannot sustain that. And that's, one of the reasons why I was ready to move on from Lovie Smith, because I think that's a very similar style of play where you have to rely on luck and, making these huge game-changing plays. And if you didn't do it, you got blown out. Like take the Arizona game in 2006, the Super Bowl year, for instance. That game was the Bears getting their ass kicked until they started making big plays late in the game. And the only way that they came back in that game was because they made huge plays on defense and special teams. Their offense was terrible, and they got their ass kicked because of it. And that is what I see with this team until they fix the quarterback problem. Because of the quarterback is the one thing that's holding this team back, and it's just so frustrating to me.
Absolutely. I do think it'll be a weird game, though, in that respect. I'm not sure that the Bears will have the same fortune, but as you said, there's just this weird feeling about it that it's going to be, again, one of the wackier games in week 4. I just have that feeling. This has been Windy City Gridiron Radio. We ran a bit longer than expected, but Pete was such a great guest, really insightful. You can follow him, again, just as a reminder, at Peter_Bukowski. He writes for Acme Packing Company, our Packers SB Nation site, writes for FanRag Sports, and he's the host of the Locked On Packers podcast. So that's a part of the entire Locked On network. For example, for the Bears, we have Lauren Cox, who we'll surely eventually have on here. He runs the Locked On Bears. So follow him. Follow Windy City Gridiron at WC Gridiron. We've got a lot of work. We consider ourselves the best Bears coverage site for a reason. I don't think Andrew will necessarily disagree with that. Follow Andrew. Not at all. Follow Andrew at BearsLink82. Always dropping some dimes right there, like you just comparing these Bears to Lovie Smith Bears. That's a perfect analogy. Follow me on Twitter at Robert Zaglinski. And let's get set for Bears Packers. Big week. Always a fun week, guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. And stay classy.